All right, you survived another week. Thank you for listening, downloading, and subscribing and supporting BlackManWithAGun.tv and Black Man with a Gun podcast. Hi, I'm Reverend Ken Blanchard, and this week on episode number 511, we're talking about revolvers and how it relates to history. Got some quotes from Frederick Douglass. I want to talk about what changed for this thing. This thing changed in a major way, the revolver, and our love for it after the 1986 Miami shootout. Going to talk about that and make sure you can actually see this. Got a quote for you. What famous American said, "A good revolver and a steady hand"? And did I say that right? Yeah. Do you need a good revolver and a steady hand? What famous American? The answer? Mr. Frederick Douglass. Yes. In 1854, good Lord. In 1854, Frederick Douglass advocated a good revolver, a steady hand, and a determination to shoot down any man attempting to kidnap. Every slave hunter who meets a bloody death in his infernal business is an argument in favor of the manhood of our race. You know, revolvers get a bad rap today, and we're going to talk about that on this episode. Also, I have a cool interview with Mandy from, where's she from? From Massachusetts. She actually tried to implement a firearm safety course for kids using the 4-H program and was shot down by the sponsor at Amherst University up in Boston. Yeah. She's going to tell all about that. And what else can I tell you? Just say thanks. I want to thank everybody who's sporting one of these. And if you want to get one, there is a link on Black Man with a Gun for our patch. And I'll send it right out to you. Also, thanks for those who actually subscribed to this channel and to the podcast during iTunes. And if you're not sure how to subscribe to a podcast, and this is like the only way you've been listening to the show, check it out. You can go to blackmanwithagun.com and bam, there's a whole bunch of little ways that you can get yours free of charge. It just comes right to your television, your cell phone, your whatever device you use. Hey, I also want to give a shout out to Colt Firearms. I actually gave him a call, and I was going to send an email wanting to get some information on that Colt pistol, the historical pieces, and I'm still waiting. You know, sometimes you think, man, I got a podcast. I've been reaching people from around the world, and I'm important. Yeah, you're not important. Well, sometimes you think, yeah, I'm the man because I got stuff going on. People talk to me. I get calls. People answer my phone calls, and then you think, no, they don't. So sometimes you just got to chill and recognize where you at in the world. It's okay. It's going to be all right. I'm going to be all right. You going to be all right. We're going to be all right. Yeah, it's like that these days. And if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's get this party started. You've survived another week. Thank you for listening, downloading, and supporting the Black Man with a Gun Show, also known as the Urban Shooter Podcast. Revolvers. Do you have any? What's your thought on them as self-defense tools? I'm going to mention them in history and how they changed and what happened and how they fell out of favor. With the 1986 FBI Miami shootout. We're talking about Frederick Douglass, the Black Codes, Negroes and the gun, the Black tradition of arms. Masada Yube's going to talk about, well, he's not going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about something that he wrote, revolvers versus automatics. And our friend Charlie Cook introduced me to Mandy Devono, who's up against the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, trying to get the 4-H for the kids. It's all about training and responsibility. But that doesn't make a hill of beans to them. All this and more coming up next on the Black Man with a Gun Show. This is the Conscientious Weekly Podcast that talks about firearms and things of interest to the gun community. Don't let the name scare you. This is the pro-fun, pro-gun show with history, commentary, news, interviews from all over America. Hi, my name is Ken Blanchard, and I've been a gun rights activist since 1991. And you just discovered the show with over 1.7 million downloads, with celebrity guests new products, and good people making a difference. After John Wayne leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance, let's get this party started.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
What a week it's been. I'm so glad you're still with me. If this is your first time listening, let me know what you think. And you can send a comment to blackmanwiththegun@gmail.com. This weekend, as this show hits the airways, I'm near the mouse down in Orlando, Florida, attending a very big podcasting conference, trying to learn some new stuff so I can be a little bit better. I hope you enjoyed this week, and I would love to know what you think. Check out blackmanwithagun.tv, also for my little video piece, in case you don't have the aggregator to listen to it. But you can get this show all over the place. But the main place you can find out everything is at blackmanwithagun.com. There's this dude by the name of Charlie Cook, and he has a YouTube channel called Riding Shotgun with Charlie. And Charlie's a good friend of mine, really cool guy. And he said, "You got to talk to my friend, Mandy." So I said, all right, do the do, man. So here is Mandy talking about something that I had no idea was going on up in Massachusetts. All right, this week I have the pleasure of talking to Mandy Devoneaux, and she is a firearms instructor and a 4-H volunteer, and she's got an interesting story that I'd like to share with you. Mandy, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
What's happening with the 4-H?
Well, about 2 years ago, I decided that I wanted my kids to participate in the 4-H shooting sports. And where I'm from originally, in Wisconsin, they offer that as a program. And I was shocked to find out that Massachusetts did not have a 4-H shooting sports program. And, of course, I couldn't let it go. So I started asking questions and talked to my 4-H state educator and said, what do I have to do to get a 4-H shooting sports program? And the major point was I needed to find funding because 4-H shooting sports requires a coordinator position. Okay, went on that path, started researching, and thank goodness we have the Mass Division of Fish and Wildlife, and they were fantastic with us. They wanted to partner, provide that funding that we needed for that coordinator position for the first 3 years, and I went to several trainings so that I knew how to organize a 4-H shooting sports program, and then worked together with the 4-H educator and the Division of Fish and Wildlife to present a program to UMass, which is our land-grant university, which all 4-H clubs are run under a under a state land-grant university, which happens to be UMass Amherst. And unfortunately, they decided not to go along with a fully funded 4-H program, which is running currently in some form in 48 other states. Mass and Rhode Island are the only two states without a 4-H shooting sports program. So that's where we have it at this moment today, and we're hoping that they overturn that decision, but that's may be a battle in itself right there. So that's where I'm at today.
Is Massachusetts anti-gun for the most part?
Legislative-wise, yes, they tend to be less gun-friendly. However, we are trying to change that by offering programs that are safety-oriented, that talk about responsible gun ownership, and make sure that our children are safe. And that's really the main focus of this 4-H program, was to provide safety training and good citizenship and responsibility when it comes to teaching children about firearms. But unfortunately, Massachusetts is not a gun-friendly state.
So as a parent, you're trying to help not only your child, but others, right?
Absolutely, on a statewide basis. And the great thing about a 4-H program is that we do outreach support. So we may have gun clubs that have a junior program, but how do we get the kids in for safety training who have parents that may not have firearms in the home or any knowledge, but they're on the fence. So they don't oppose firearms necessarily, but they don't know anything about it. So how do we outreach to those families? And the 4-H program provides that perfect outreach for safety training and education.
Yeah, a lot of times all the bigger organizations, because they're either their political affiliation or their perception, don't get a chance to help our communities. And 4-H has been around since the early 1900s, so that thing's out there. But I can't see what the opposition is so heavy about in Massachusetts. Can you?
My feeling is that the university did not want to be controversial and promote a firearms safety program. Unfortunately, their answer when I asked why it was rejected was they wanted to create a broader-based program that included hunting, fishing, and conservation wildlife education with the limited resources that they had. And that's very contradictory because we had provided them with a program that taught firearm safety as well as hunter's education, wildlife education, and we could have added fishing sports to that with the university's limited resource. So instead of working together with us, they chose to deny this program because it was controversial. Even though it's a needed program, we teach our kids about sex education, drugs and alcohol abuse. We teach them how to drive a car, but yet we're not giving them the opportunity to learn about firearm safety. And I feel that it was easier for them to say no than it was to promote a time-honored program like 4-H.
Yeah, that was some double speak there. 'Cause you can't have hunter safety without the firearms piece.
Yes, that's correct.
So, like a good politician, maybe you just have to reword it a little bit.
That may be the way, but again, I'm a very transparent person and straightforward and to the point, and I don't want to hide what we're trying to do here, and that's educate our families and our children about the safety that's involved with the firearms. And we're teaching them when it's okay to use firearms. So in a hunting program, on the range for competition and practice, on paper targets and clay targets. That's all we're teaching the children at this point, and the safety aspect around that. So I don't know if rewording it would do any good or if it would hamper what we're trying to promote. And that's, again, the safety issue when it comes to firearms and children.
You're just saying truth, man. Just stay honest, and that's where you're getting all the grief.
Right. I don't know how else to be. So
that's a good thing.
I'm not
right
a politician, so maybe that's my fault here. Is I'm not a politician.
No, you stay Mandy. That's cool right there. What are the age groups of the 4-H kids?
So we would start children as young as 8, and we go up to 18. However, with that being said, obviously we would be age appropriate. So we're not going to put an 8-year-old with a 12-gauge shotgun in their hands. We'll start them with either archery or air rifle, and then we move them up at age appropriate times. And we would follow the National 4-H shooting sports standards when it comes to that.
Oh, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
For anybody listening that's in your area in Massachusetts, what can they do to help?
Well, they can write to their legislators, their state senators and their state representatives, and let them know that we need to encourage the university to recognize this program and not just a hunting and fishing program, but they need to recognize the shooting sports program. And instead of rejecting a fully funded program, work together with us to provide that broad-based program. If they're so worried about adding the fishing sports, reach out to those legislators and tell them you want this program, and you're not ready to settle for anything else at this point.
In a nice way.
In a nice way, yes. Please be polite. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes our passion gets in our way. I've seen that.
It does.
Because you can't understand why anybody in their right mind would be so negative about something so positive, but they are. And it just takes the numbers of us to stand up. Don't accept that somebody else will do it for you. If you are in Massachusetts, please put pen to paper or type to a computer and make that thing known. All right, Mandy, how else can we help?
You can also contact Gun Owners Action League. They've been very supportive in helping me promote this program because they understand the importance of firearm safety. And their website is GOAL, GOAL.org, and that's a Massachusetts-based gun ownership advocacy group.
Oh, cool. And I will make sure I put that link in the show notes for GOAL.
Excellent.
The Gun Owners Action League. What a good name.
Yes, very much.
How about the rest of us out here in the rest of the world that's listening to this dilemma, this problem? What can we do to help you?
Well, you could write into the University of Massachusetts, especially if you have experience with either the 4-H program or another junior shooting sports program, and tell them about the positive impact that it has had on your family and your children. That may help. You can also donate to the Massachusetts 4-H Foundation. They've been very supportive of me in this endeavor, and they were just as disappointed about the rejection as well. They support our 4-H clubs, and maybe if there's a possibility of funding for a shooting sports program, that they would look upon it more positively at the UMass level.
Oh, that's good stuff. If somebody wanted to contact you, can they?
They certainly can. My email is Mandy with a Y, Deveno, Deveno, @yahoo.com.
And then you can get the scoop for yourself. Mandy, thank you so much for educating me on this thing, and I will spread it in my little circle as best I can.
Well, thank you very much, and God bless.
God bless you.
This portion of the show is sponsored by CrossbreedHolsters.com. Crossbreed Holsters has gained national recognition as a maker of the best and most functional concealment holsters available on the market today. Each holster is handcrafted to ensure your firearm is safe and secure while carrying, combined with the best customer service in the industry. Visit CrossbreedHolsters.com.
You've probably heard a lot about the Civil War and how it was brother against brother and friend against friend. But there's a whole bunch of small stories of black soldiers and the things that happened during the war. In April of 1865, soldiers from the 52nd U.S. Colored Infantry descended upon Vicksburg, Mississippi plantation of Jared and Minerva Cook. Some of them evidently had been slaves of Cook before the war, brandishing revolvers. They demanded that Cook turn over his guns and ransack the house. Then they demanded the silver. Before it was over, they had shot and killed Minerva Cook and wounded Jared. When their crime was detected, the men were court-martialed and several of them hanged. I don't doubt that all of them were hung. In Victoria, Texas, black troops did their own hanging, dragging a white man accused of murdering a freedman from his jail cell and stringing him up. And again in South Carolina, black troops formed the lynch party to avenge the fatal stabbing of a black sergeant who had fought with the Confederate veteran after refusing to leave a white railroad car. The black troopers tried to rebel a drumhead court-martial and then shot him down. Almost as soon as the Civil War ended, the Southern governments moved to reinstitute slavery through a variety of state and local laws, restricting every aspect of Negro life, from work to travel to property rights. Gun prohibition was a common theme of these, quote, black codes. You heard me talk about that earlier. White anxiety about free Negroes with guns was fueled by episodes like the scene Thomas Pinckney encountered when he returned to his plantation on the Santee River in South Carolina. Already warned that his, quote, Negroes had looted the place, Pinckney called them around to explain that he wanted to pay them wages and restore the plantation to profitability. Pinckney chose his words carefully because most of his newly minted freemen had come to the assembly armed. Their reaction to his proposal was chastening. Now unafraid to look him in the eye, Pinckney's boys said they planned to work for themselves and refused to work for any white man. Pinckney asked, where did they propose to go? And the answer brought him up short. We ain't going nowhere. Their plan was to stay where they were and work the land. Although these men were surely unfamiliar with the legal principle of restitution, where without any formal agreement, assets are reallocated to prevent unjust enrichment, their instincts were consistent with that theme. And in the spirit of the common law, they were intent on enforcing their claim through self-help if necessary. One black man wearing a Union Army coat made the point dramatically. Standing in the doorway of his cabin, his hand clutched around a rifle, he slammed the butt of the gun to and declared that he would work the land under his feet, and he challenged any man to put me out of this house. Other armed Negroes were similarly provocative. One clear-eyed veteran from Louisiana embraced the war's lessons about force, incentives, and cooperation, and advised, quote, every colored soldier, bring your gun home. Another Negro veteran showed clear appreciation for these themes, recounted how in 1865, when the war ended, I goes back to my master and he treats me like his brother. But he was under no illusion about this evident change of heart, concluding, guess he was scared of me because I had so much ammunition on me. Mississippi minister Samuel Agnew exhibited the worry of many Southerners, writing in late 1865 that, quote, our Negroes certainly have guns and are frequently shooting about. It signaled conflicts to come that local freedmen were in, quote, high dudgeon over recent efforts by roving gangs of regulators to disarm them. The blacks, according to Agnew, were now demanding that they had, quote, equal rights with the white man to bear arms. All right, I'm going to stop for a quick second and just give a little commentary. The reason why this stuff is cool and our shared American heritage is that some people think that the fight for the right to keep and bear arms has only happened in the last 20 years. It's been going on since the invention of gunpowder. Whoever had the gun was always trying to fight to keep it. It has been used most specifically in this country against the poor versus the rich, the affluent versus the non-affluent, and black against white. The argument is old. And if you are a person of color in the U.S. of A., you have a heritage, a shared American heritage with this thing that you probably don't know anything about. And any man, woman, child of any race, any color, any ethnicity that supports you is a brother. Anybody trying to take a firearm away from you in the U.S. of A. is your enemy. It makes us uniquely American to be able to have a firearm. It makes you free. A Freedmen's Bureau agent from Florida lamented the wide practice among freedmen of traveling armed, and a Bureau agent operating in the Sea Islands of Georgia and South Carolina reported that the Negroes under his charge were widely armed and that these, quote, guns they prize are their most valued possessions next to their land. In North Carolina, appeals to the governor's office displayed a simmering fear among defeated rebels about Negroes with guns. One correspondent wrote candidly about his worry that the design is to organize for the general massacre of white population. Nearly every Negro is armed not only with a gun, long gun, but a revolver. The meeting of 1,000 or 2 Negroes every other Sunday with officers and drilling, I think, a serious matter. In October 1865, Mississippi planter E.G. Baker similarly complained in a letter to the state legislature, quote, it is well known here that our Negroes through the country are well equipped with firearms, muskets, double-barrel shotguns, and pistols. These sorts of fears fueled overly and overtly racist gun laws like Mississippi's Act to regulate the relation of master and apprentice relative to freedmen. prohibiting blacks from owning guns, ammunition, dirks, or bowie knives. An 1865 Florida law similarly prohibited Negroes, mulattoes, or other persons of color from possessing gun ammunition or blade weapons without obtaining a license issued by a judge on the recommendation of two respectable citizens, presumably white. Violators were punishable by being publicly whipped up to 39 stripes. Alabama prohibited any freedman, mulatto, or free person of color in the state to own firearms or carry about his person a pistol or a deadly weapon. And that 39 stripes is biblical. There was law placed by the Romans that 40 stripes would kill you. And that's just a general statement, not saying that 39 won't. And Jesus was whipped with 39 stripes. Scourged, actually, worse than just a whip. The federal government, with an occupying army still in place, countermanded much of the discriminatory arms legislation. In January of 1866, General Daniel Sickles, commander of federal occupation troops, issued a general order that, quote, the constitutional rights of all loyal and well-disposed inhabitants to bear arms will not be infringed. Black Code drafters also faced the problem that has always affected or afflicted weapons embargoes, even for ruthless post-war lawmakers saying that guns were banned to blacks was different from actually prying them away. The assessment of a black trooper assigned to the Freedmen's Bureau in Mississippi is instructive here. In a letter to Bureau Commissioner Private Calvin Holly, described an incident in Vicksburg involving armed black men. He noted, quote, they were forbidden by the Black Code not to have any guns, but did not heed. Attempts to disarm the freedmen appeared not only in state statutes, but also in local ordinances and private contracts. In a report to President Andrew Johnson, General Charles Schurz, S-C-H-U-R-Z, described a series of local ordinances in Louisiana that prohibited blacks from owning any type of weapons without permission from their employer and separate approval by the mayor. In other cases, petty plantation tyrants put conditions in long-term labor contracts prohibiting blacks from possessing firearms. The Black Code and labor contract restrictions were a piece with violent attempts to disarm blacks perpetrated by local police, white state militias, and Klan-type organizations that rose during Reconstruction to wage a war on Southern redemption. The formal Klan emerged out of Tennessee in 1866, but across the South, similar organizations cropped up under names like the White Brotherhood, the Knights of the White Camellia, the Innocents, Knights of the Black Cross. Black disarmament was part of their common agenda. Truth be told, many black veterans left military service from probably every war up until the Vietnam era with their service weapon or war prizes and was probably better armed than the general black population. And this has always been an issue in the community because the mentality has not changed. And if you dig what I've been putting down, you can check out the book, Negroes and the Gun, The Black Tradition of Arms by my friend and brother, Nicholas Johnson. Prior to 1986, it would be pretty easy to find a law enforcement officer with a revolver. Same with a security officer. It was the status quo. But right around the time when I was attending the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, that fall of 1986, earlier in the year, there was a major shootout with FBI agents and two criminals that changed everything. Tactics changed after that. And the following year, as I rolled into protective details, we studied the 1986 Miami shootout. Michael Platt and William Maddox were the criminals here. Despite having no criminal record before they began their crime spree that ended their careers and their lives. The two met while serving at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Maddox had been a former Marine before enlisting into the Army. Platt was a Ranger. Strangely enough, The wives of both men died under strange circumstances, but neither was charged with any crime. The two men began their crime wave by murdering 25-year-old Emilio Brillo while he was target shooting on October 5, 1985, and stealing his car. Over the next 6 months, Platt and Maddox began a spree of bank and armored car robberies, wounding 2 guards. On March 12, 1986, the two shot Jose Collazo, severely wounding him and stealing his black Monte Carlo. A week later, Platt and Maddox hit another bank, but their car was noticed and their fate was sealed. On April 11, 1986, a team of 14 FBI agents and Special Agent Gordon McNeil in charge organized a rolling stakeout looking for the black Monte Carlo. They had no idea who they were looking for specifically, and they certainly had no idea what they were about to come up against. Dividing up in 11 cars, only 8 agents actually were involved in the whole event. What I'm about to do is give you a blow-by-blow account of what happened in only about 4 minutes, where over 125 rounds were fired. Around 9:30 a.m., agents Ben Grogan and Jerry Dove spotted the Monte Carlo and began tailing it. 2 other cars joined in and tried to pull Platt and Maddox over. After several tries to force the Monte Carlo over, one good shove pushed the getaway car, nose first, into a tree, with a parked car blocking the passenger door and Special Agent Richard Manauzzi's car blocking the driver's side. Unfortunately, plain bumper cars with Platt and Maddox had caused problems for the agents as well. Manauzzi had placed his Smith & Wesson .357 on the seat next to him in anticipation, but the sudden stop sent it flying. He was now unarmed. Ben Grogan's glasses were also sent flying, which he needed to see with. He was nearly blind. All hell broke loose when Maddox opened fire with his 12-gauge shotgun, followed up by Platt, who let loose with a withering fire from his .223 Ruger Mini-14. Manauzzi took one of those .223s to his right side before diving out of his car as his passenger side door only inches from the bad guy's Monte Carlo. Platt, who was in the passenger side of the car and firing across the front of Maddox out of the driver's side window, soon came under fire from Ben Grogan, despite being legally blind without his glasses. Maddox tried to open the driver's side door as Grogan got off 9 shots from his 9mm Smith & Wesson, while Gordon McNeil began firing his Smith & Wesson Model 19 revolver loaded with 158 grain, 38 special plus Ps. One of Grogan's shots hit Maddox in the right forearm, cutting the ulnar artery. As Maddox slipped back into the car, one of McNeil's 38 rounds hit him in the head below the right temple. Another of McNeil's shots hit Maddox in the neck as he lay slumped over the car door. After he fired off a full cylinder, McNeil took a .223 round to his shooting hand. McNeil then retreated to his car. While he was in the process of trying to reload, he took a .223 from Platt's Ruger to his neck that knocked him out of the fight. Agents Edmundo Morales and John Hanlon, meanwhile, had gotten into the fight as well. Hanlon had also lost his primary gun during the crash and was now using his Smith & Wesson .36 Snubby. Morales was carrying a Remington 870 shotgun, but he came up behind McNeil before his hand wound. Morales took a .223 to his left forearm, now leaving him to fight with one hand. Platt's .223 was taking a heavy toll on the agents. Platt was able to get himself out of the crippled car, but it came at a cost. Jerry Dove was able to hit Platt in the chest with a 9mm round, which was later found only an inch from his heart, and it collapsed his right lung. Agents Gilbert Oranchia and Ronald Risner also had entered the fight from cover with their 9mm and .357, also loaded with 38 plus Ps, respectively, firing dozens of rounds at Platt. Platt was hit twice more by Dove, once in the thigh and the foot, and once in the back by Oranchia, but he was able to still stay in the fight. What Platt did before was nothing to compare to his reign of terror once he got free of his car. He drew his Smith & Wesson .357 Magnum and began returning Oranchia and Risner's fire. Platt took a hit to his right forearm, causing him to drop his revolver. Platt now turned to face Grogan. During the next few confusing seconds, Platt fired in Oranchia and Risner's direction, and it was here when McNeil sustained his neck wound. Hanlon after shooting his .38 dry, was shot in his shooting hand. All this was done by Platt shooting his Mini-14 from his weak hand. Platt now closed on Grogan. Michael Platt and shot Agent Ben Grogan in the chest, killing him. Platt then shot Agent Hanlon in the groin, but did not kill him, even though he could have. Platt instead shot and killed Jerry Dove by firing 2 shots in the agent's head. Dove died instantly. Platt then tried to get into Grogan's car when Agent Morales opened up on him with the Remington. 5 rounds of double-I buck hit Platt in both feet, but he stayed on his feet. Remarkably, Maddox, despite his wounds, woke up at this point. He crawled to Grogan's car unseen by the agents who were concentrating their fire and attention on the wounded but still lethal Platt. Maddox slid into Grogan's car, in no condition to put up a fight. He was joined by Platt, who tried to start Grogan's car, but his wounds began to catch up with his body. Morales drew his .357 and then moved to the car. Approaching the driver's side, he fired all 6 rounds into the door. Platt was struck in the back, and as he turned to face Morales, was struck above the right eye and once in the chest. Maddox took 3 shots in the face. The fight was over, and Platt and Maddox were dead. All I just said only took 4 minutes. Platt was struck 12 times and Maddox 6 before they were finally put down. Both men had no alcohol or drugs in their system. What came out of the shooting was the FBI abandoning the revolver because of its difficulty to reload under fire, and with it both the .38 plus B load and the 9mm for the agency. The Bureau first went to the 10mm, but found agents were having trouble qualifying with it, so the .40 Smith & Wesson was conceived, which was now proved to be popular due to its performance. The Miami shootout has become a bitter training lesson that has resounded throughout the law enforcement community. The tragic events of April 11, 1986 in Miami have led to better guns and better training, but at the cost of 2 good people. If you are new to the gun culture, you might not realize how closely linked law enforcement choices affect what is bought and sold to us civilians. The resurgence of the .40 caliber and the philosophy of having more rounds downrange versus accuracy was implemented. The deal of shooting with your non-dominant hand or your weak hand came out of this thinking as well. This portion of the show has been brought to you by the United States Concealed Carry Association. The USCCA has been providing education, training, and self-defense insurance to responsibly armed Americans since 2003. Join Tim Schmidt and myself here at usconcealedcarry.com. I believe every fan of American history should own a revolver. Yeah, I know. It's old-fashioned, but it should be an heirloom. Before we got caught up in the 9mm versus the 1911, there was the wheel gun. It was the gun of the Civil War that in surplus was available to both poor whites and former slaves. The elite hated that and raised the cost of them so that it was not affordable. That same thing is happening today. Revolvers were guns of the Old West, and Colt ruled. It was the first pistol many of our ancestors held in secret. It was the gun that the black codes were referencing. Hunting was a way of life, but to have a handgun, that was different. So if you want to collect something, this is it. This, and there is some history here. Americans of African descent have a history with this revolver. It was the gun held by Harriet Tubman. It was the one stolen by Henry Bibb that he wrote about to protect himself. It was the gun that the most photographed American of African heritage in the 19th century was speaking to both fugitives and freemen in 1854, also known as Frederick Douglass, said, "A good revolver, a steady hand, and a determination to shoot down any man attempted to kidnap. Every slave owner who meets a bloody death in his infernal business is an argument in favor of the manhood of our race." Frederick Douglass, born into slavery in 1818, he escaped as a young man and became a leading voice in the abolitionist movement, and for his entire life, he fought for equality and justice for all people. And while I'm talking about my hero, Frederick Douglass, it's kind of funny that recently President Donald Trump had some major flubs in reference to him. He acted like he was still around. If you haven't heard, there's a video on blackmanwiththegun.com, or soon shall be. Since he referenced Douglas, thought I'd add that so you can talk about it amongst yourselves. Revolvers do get a bad rap, though, in comparison to pistols on the market today. Some don't think they're convenient or they're viable as self-defense tools. The fact is, prior to 1985, it was the most popular firearm for self-defense used by both law enforcement and security. What changed is the great 1986 FBI shootout, and I'm going to talk about that in a little while. But let's get our terms together. Revolver speak, double action or single action revolver. All modern day single action revolvers are based loosely on the Colt single action army. Now I thought I was going to get some Colt action people in here, some Colt firearms company representatives, but that didn't happen. There are a number of manufacturers of single action revolvers, including Ruger. There's Freedom Arms, Uberti, and Steel Colt. Samuel Colt submitted a British patent for his revolver in 1835 and an American patent, number 138, on February 25th, 1836 for a, quote, revolving gun, and made the first production model on March 5th of that year. Another revolver patent was issued to Samuel Colt on August 29th, 1839. Single actions derive their name from the fact that they can only be fired by cocking the hammer and squeezing the trigger one shot at a time, whereas the double action can be fired in the same manner as the single action, or simply by squeezing the trigger to fire, hence double action. Double action revolvers are available from Smith & Wesson, Colt, Ruger, Taurus, and a whole bunch of other companies. A double action revolver offers a couple of advantages over its single action counterpart, to include the ability to fire by simply pulling the trigger without pulling the hammer back, and the ability to open the cylinder and load and unload more easily compared to a single action revolver where one round at a time can be loaded and unloaded. Law enforcement officers and security use this double action, while hunters, target shooters, and collectors still prefer single actions. The Cowboy action gun that I reviewed earlier from Taylor & Company was single action. And the ones you'll see in that classic Western and that movie and the remake of The Magnificent Seven were all single action as well. And to give you some news that you can use, from my friend and brother Massad Ayyub's The Gun Digest book of concealed carry, he has a piece on here, a revolver or auto, and it reads like this. As you assess your particular balance of needs, you'll find some stark differences between the attributes of the double-action revolver and the semi-automatic pistol. So let's go for a quick overview. All auto-loading pistols have long, bearing surfaces between slide and frame, making them sensitive to proper lubrication. They are also dependent on clean, pristine magazines with unfatigued springs. Thus, auto pistols are more maintenance-intensive than revolvers, which can be left unlubricated and at rest, literally, for decades with no degradation in function. Massad says military-spec auto pistols such as the Glock, Beretta, SIG, etc. have large tolerances between the moving parts, allowing them to function when sand or dirt get into the mechanisms. The more finely fitted revolvers may choke if dropped in a sand pile or immersed in mud. Thus, while the revolver is more forgiving of a lack of routine maintenance, the automatic is more forgiving of field abuse. So, if you remember, when you look at a military-style semi-automatic, the 1911, the old Beretta, any gun that is kind of like put out in mass, and you grab it and it shakes. That's what he's talking about, the large tolerances of moving parts. When you buy the pristine and the expensive semi-automatics where everything is just done to machine specs, nothing rattles. It's one solid piece of metal with almost like Swiss moving parts. You pay for that. But it also means tolerances go down. In the serious defense calibers, 38 special and up, revolvers have only 5 shots in the small frame models, 6 in the standard frame, and occasionally 7 or 8 in the larger, progressively harder to conceal sizes. The smallest 9mm autos start at 7 rounds on board, quickly progress to 10 or 11, and if you can carry a light polymer frame, full-size 9mm auto you're up to 18 rounds or so. 20 if you don't mind a small magazine extension protruding from the butt. With quick interchanging magazines, the autos are also much faster to reload. By any measure, if firepower is what you want, a semi-automatic is what you need. Most semi-automatics can jam if pressed against an assailant's body before firing, as can happen in a belly-to-belly fight to the death or rape attempt. The pressure will push most autos' slides out of battery or firing alignment of the parts, preventing even one shot from being fired. If the first shot discharges, viscous blood, fat, and brain matter may be backblasted from a shot against bare flesh into the barrel bushing area of the autoloader as it cycles, preventing the slide from closing into battery for a subsequent shot. With a revolver, however, this is not the consideration. If your likeliest threat profile is a contact distance, mugging, rape, or murder attempt, the revolver will give you an advantage. Muzzle contact shots are particularly devastating since the violent expanding gases of the muzzle blast are directed into the opponent's body, causing massive additional damage. Revolver shooters have tended historically to practice with light loads using mild wad cutters or feebled 130 grain generic 38 special range loads for training, and then loading monster Elmer Keith Memorial Magnum loads of 357 Persuasion for the street. Cops got away from that long ago because they realized that light loads didn't prepare the officer to hit with the hard-kicking gun at the moment of truth. Too many private citizens still delude themselves this way. An advantage of the auto pistol is that it won't run with light loads, forcing the shooter into relevant practice. Shorter, more efficient auto pistol loads tend to produce less muzzle flash at night than revolver ammo of equivalent power levels, i.e. 38 Special versus 9mm, 357 Magnum versus 357 SIG, or 45 Colt versus 45 ACP, or 45 Glock auto pistol rounds, GAP. The less muzzle flash, the less the shooter is blinded by his or her own weapon, another advantage to the auto. One of the things, if you didn't know that, is that Mossad is an expert witness and has testified many times in shootings and after the fact. And you can tell that by anything that you read from him. It's not the normal crap you hear on the internet, on YouTube. Just saying. Autos tend to have squared off handles that press tightly against the body, particularly in pocket, ankle, belly band, or other deep concealment carry modes. This means the fingers of the drawing hand may have to fight a little to get between the flesh and the gun to gain a drawing grasp. The rounded profile of the small frame revolver allows a much faster grip, hence a much faster draw. Score point for the revolver here, particularly in pocket, ankle, or belly band carry. Revolvers tend overall to be somewhat more reliable than auto pistols, which can jam from being held with a limp wrist, from using too short or too long a cartridge, or from lack of lubrication or magazine damage. Particularly for non-experienced shooters and those who don't routinely lubricate their guns, this gun, the wheel gun, a reliable edge. So, quote, auto shooters, remember to lubricate your carry gun monthly, even if you don't shoot it. Lubricant is liquid. It drains and evaporates. If you carry in an ankle holster, grit builds up on the gun quickly. Only a few, quote, military spec, end quote, small autos seem to survive this buildup without jamming. And Mass quotes the Kel-Tec P11 and the P38T, the baby Glocks, and the cars, for example. Revolvers tolerate this grit buildup in ankle holsters much better. One thing he says he's noticed more and more since autoloaders have become predominant in police work, aka since 1986, is that if they are carried with a manual safety locked in the safe position, they offer an element of proprietary nature to the user if a criminal gains control of the weapon. There are other factors to consider, but these are the key points. They help to explain why serious shooters today seem to prefer autoloaders, but most experts recommend revolvers for beginners, and for that class of gun owners that expert Mark Moritz defines as non-dedicated personnel. It also explains why the revolver is so popular as a hideout or backup gun, even among highly trained people. When in doubt, do what he does, Mass says. With the service-grade automatic on my hip and a light snub-nose revolver in my pocket, I figure I'm covered whether St. Peter turns out to be a Bill Jordan revolver fan or a Jeff Cooper auto fan when I meet him on Judgment Day. I want to share with you, in case you didn't know, that I revised a book that I wrote in 1999 and had this one published by White Feather Press called Black Man with a Gun Reloaded. It's a behind-the-scenes perspective of my life as a gun rights activist since 1991. It's a personal, candid, and honest about how I got here story, how I've been influenced by and some of the characters in this community. It also concludes with a glossary of terms and things every gun person should know, and it'll help new people in our community. Go to Amazon.com today and order a copy for yourself. I'm trying to break even with this thing and need to sell about 100 more copies. If you don't have one or could afford a new one, go to book.blackmanwithagun.com and the link will take you right there. I believe what Will Rogers said when he said that, everybody's ignorant, just on different subjects. Think about that the next time somebody tries to pull your coat or get your goat or troll you about a certain subject. It's okay not to know, not to comment. And sometimes the best thing you can do is to shut up. Well, that's it for this week. I want to thank you for joining me. And if you liked what you heard, please tell somebody. Dr. Martin Luther King said, "We've learned to fly the air like birds. We've learned to swim the seas like fish. And yet we haven't learned to walk the earth as brothers and sisters." Until next week, just in case nobody has told you this today, I love you. And there's not a darn thing you can do about it. Shalom, baby.